Hey guys, it's J.P.Fluellen with another episode of this Success Agent podcast. And I am super jacked about this episode today because we're with Jamie.Flanagan. And I'm just going to let her do her thing today. But we're going to talk specifically about property management. I know that a lot of agents out there that are going to listen to this and watch this are not investing. And so you guys need to think about where the opportunities are at, how to take advantage of those, how to find money, get money, and then manage those properties. Because if you can do it yourself, you can save a lot of money. And so what we do on this podcast, if you're just tuning in for the first time, is we interview top agents, team leaders, broker owners, awesome people, experts in their field. And so we're just going to go ahead and get going. So Jamie, tell us.
How are you?
I'm awesome. This is great.
It is great. I'm excited to do this today. I've always wanted to have a conversation about the rental property and help educate other agents. So this will be super cool.
Awesome. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about how you got into real estate, what you did before, and then what made you decide to get into property management and purchasing investment properties, managing them yourself. And so let's go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been licensed real estate agent for about 12 years, I think. Let's see, 2008 I started and got licensed in 2009. And honestly, like when I first got into the business, I was the cold calling. I remember doing like Floyd Wickman, I think was the program. I started boot camp for real estate agents. And from there, made a Craigslist call. That's how we did cold calling back then. We called off Craigslist. We didn't have Facebook DMs yet, I don't think. But I called on an investor and she gave me a chance. So met with her, ended up listing, I think like 6 or 7 of their properties. And that was kind of my foot in the door into real estate, and had no intent. Actually, that experience scared the living crap out of me, to be completely honest, because after seeing what she kind of managed and dealt with, and because they sell the properties they don't want to have anymore. They're not there. So you see kind of the bad end of things. And so what I encourage people to do, honestly, is like, as a buyer's agent, when you first get in this business, you're usually showing buyers homes, or you are, your average listing price is, you're starting lower, or the move-up buyer. And so you're seeing some of the houses and it might scare you. And I encourage you to actually look at those situations as opportunities. And as soon as you can flip that switch in your head as this isn't a ton of work, because you're doing the same thing with your buyers. You're going out and saying, this just needs carpet and paint. And really, we're just looking at properties on a little bit bigger scale. Yes, it might need HVAC or a roof, but it's the same thing. You just change, the cost analysis on it and decide what it needs and fix it up and rent it out. And that's so we didn't actually get into rental properties at that time. Like I said, I was a little bit scared, but about 5 years into being licensed, we ended up renting out my own personal home. So it was our 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse. Me and my husband lived there and found out we were pregnant with a second kid. So we was like, do we sell this or do we, rent it out? And we were just like everyone else, like, oh, what if they tear this house up and we have to come in and fix it afterwards? And it ended up being a great experience, actually. We moved into a new home, and that house turned into, we still own that house today. And, when you look at a property that we were able to get, FHA financing at that time. And so interest rate was, 3.5%, I want to say, or maybe 4% at the most. And payment was really good. We did a 15-year mortgage on that. And now looking back, 5-6 years later, we've got almost $100,000 of equity in that property, and it's been profitable for us over the last few years. So if that doesn't tell you to just try it and do it, even on one property, $100,000 is a pretty good return on investment, I think. And it was that one was a low risk situation. It was move-in ready. It's in an HOA that's healthy. So the HOA dues cover, lawn care, exterior maintenance. We only have to have, the renters have a renter's insurance policy on the interior, and then the HOA covers the exterior. So it was a very safe investment as our first one. So as like your first rental property, you might have less cash flow, but it might be a really good thing to look for a safer investment. Something that is move-in ready. It's got newer appliances. Not much can go wrong until you start to have cash. And now what's great now is we actually have 43 units. So we self-manage 43 units. And my husband's on the mortgage side, so he does financing, and he doesn't finance our properties, but he's got the banking relationships that allows us to go and cross-leverage, cross-collateralize our properties now. So we're able to go and pretty much, if we find an opportunity, we can act on it right away. So yeah, it started with 1 and it turned into 43, and there was no intention of doing that. So I have to say it happened on accident, but now that we're in it, we're a little bit addicted to it. And, you turn, if there, I think the common questions we get is like, oh my gosh, you deal with tenant calls all the time. Do you deal with this? And my biggest learning curve on having 43 units is, and it's like anything in business, the more you plan, the better. So I encourage you to jump in. However, take advice from people who have done it before and have checklists. A move-in checklist is gold. Going through the unit, I have somebody on my staff that actually walks the unit with the tenant. She actually shows the properties. So what we do is we use a system called Appfolio, and we put the property in. It manages all of our rents. It manages all of our maintenance requests. It manages our leasing, and it manages our marketing. So when I put a unit in there, I can actually just click a button and it'll go out to all the popular sites once I've uploaded the pictures and everything. And then through that one app, and I have it on my phone, I can manage inquiries. So, just like your real estate business, you've got, whatever CRM you're using, we use Appfolio, and everything is held within that system, and it makes it really streamlined. Yes, we still get calls, but we also have like maintenance people, vendors within that system. And if, it's winter, it's getting cold here in Nebraska. So right now, my biggest request, and I just know for the next about 8 weeks, as people start turning on their furnaces, we're going to get calls, and we kind of, we've got a budget figured in for that. I think my husband's the numbers guy, but I think we have like a 1% budget figured in. And so, I know that I'm going to have about 3 to 4 HVAC calls, $130 a piece. And you just kind of get in the groove of things, and you start to recognize where your expenses are going to come from. And so within Appfolio, if somebody requests an HVAC guy, or my furnace isn't lighting up, I can troubleshoot a little bit over the phone, or like I'll text them and say, is there batteries in the, have you changed the furnace filter? And they'll say yes and yes. And then I send the guy out, but I just assign it within there. He gets an email, he accepts it. He actually gets the tenant information right through the system. He'll go out there. Yesterday I said, hey, did you get that request? He goes, oh yeah, I've already been there. You got the bill's in your email. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even need to check in. So it does streamline things a lot. It really simplifies the whole process. But again, being proactive up front and having your vendors in there when you start, so that you can easily assign them when it comes up. So having an HVAC guy, a plumber, electrician, those are all good people to have.
So what do you do when your guys are too busy? Because I run into that issue.
They told me they're too busy. We got problems.
Yeah, I run into that issue here because we only have like 10 HVAC people that are worth a darn, about 7 plumbers, 3 or 4 electricians that are actually worth anything. So we run into this issue a lot where, they're so busy because they're dealing with so many other, agents in their inspections and everything. Because I don't know how you guys do inspections in Nebraska, but here we do inspections where the plumber does the plumbing, electrician does the electrical, and HVAC guy does the HVAC. And then if they want some sort of partial home inspection, we'll do it that way. But I know a lot of states will do we just do a big home inspection and then just go from there. So all of our licensed folks are pretty busy doing inspections, and we're in a smaller town. We're like 60,000 people with 500 agents. So it's quite saturated in that regard. So I don't know how do you guys do it out there?
That's interesting, because I'm processing that from a couple different perspectives, because we actually do a home, basically a overview home inspection, and then we have the plumber and electrician come in after the fact if we need to. But I've always written my contracts as instead, in lieu of home inspection, licensed contractors to review HVAC, electrical, and plumbing. And it's funny because I've always wondered why we didn't do that, but that would cause a pretty good demand shortage. So we do it opposite here, which probably does help with the availability. I have a couple very, very, very trusted individuals that very loyal to, and they take really good care of us. And so I've been lucky, and I feel, actually, I will say that's probably the biggest blessing in my business is the people, you're nothing without your team, and really the vendor relationships that we have keep us where we're at and help us grow. Because I can trust them. I know that they're not going to go tell me it needs a new furnace when it really doesn't need a new furnace. And I think it's super, super important. And having those, even if you're just starting out, I think it's good too, reaching out and having a few people to say, hey, this is my goal. I want to get big someday. I want to have multiple properties. And I know I only might have one right now, and it might not be a lot of work for you, but I'm hoping to get here. So can we make a deal that will take care of each other? And I'll make sure I always refer you. And it's back to that generating relationships thing that we're so good at in this business, and maintaining those relationships really well. And you'll get that. But, and I talk to a lot of investors, and some people like to shop and get the best deal all the time. And I personally have learned I would rather pay a little bit more, have a really solid relationship, and know that guy's going to show up all the time. We have a full-time handyman. So he's a salary guy, and the nice thing about combining him with real estate is if I have a client, I have a listing coming live and I need to go have him throw some tile in, I've got him, he's salary on our team. So I can move him around where we need to. And, if something's a priority, we've got 43 rentals. We get lots of requests that are minor, closet door isn't on the hinge or whatever. So I can move those around, or if I have slow time for him, I kind of stack those. And then, we've got a day where we don't have any work to do. So let's go send you on this to-do list that all these tenants, nothing majorly emergency, but go and fix up the units, check on the mulch, like all the little things that you just do on a normal property.
Sure. We've tossed around the idea of doing that and also I know some other investors and other property managers in Cheyenne. So we're thinking about just having like one guy that we all share,
Yeah.
And then that way it'll be like co-op all of our people, so we don't have to share them with anybody.
For sure. Yes.
So there's some things about, as you're growing, you have to start thinking outside the box. Okay. So let's talk about how you go from, a townhouse condo to 43 units. And then at what point do you go, man, we really got to figure out how to manage all of this stuff through one app? And did you have a different app you went through before AppFolio and then a transition? And then let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I had a lease template. I did everything through Dotloop. I just sent, so we kind of use Dotloop for our leases, your lead-based paint disclosure, all of that. And then I had a walkthrough checklist that I personally met with the client or the tenant and met with them and walked the unit. And then, we used Cozy for rent collection, but some people were cash. So when it changed for me from going from Cozy, where that was just a rent collection, I think you could put maintenance expenses in there. And then I was doing the leases separate. So my husband was managing kind of the finance side. So he was managing the Cozy, and then I was managing the tenant relationship. So again, realtors were like on more, and it depends, I guess, on your specialty, but I'm more front end sales. So I'm good. I meet the tenant, show them the unit. Once they're kind of, yep, I'm ready to commit. He would run the application. He would do, enter all of that in, make sure, and he's in mortgage. So he'd do all the tenant screening and stuff like that. Look at their debt ratios. So we've had really good luck too with tenant screening. We don't have a lot of delinquencies because he's phenomenal at analyzing their scenario. So when it really changed is when our real estate business grew. So we're busy on the real estate side selling houses. And then a lot of our tenants started paying in cash. So on about the 7th of the month, I was running around all of Omaha picking up cash from the people who wanted to pay cash. And I'm like, okay, this has got to stop. There's got to be a better way. And completely coincidental, I believe in the universe providing, what you need. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but met this girl who happened to, she was introduced to me from a friend, like out of the state, and was like, you have to meet my friend. She manages properties, and I just think you guys would hit it off. And I'm like, well, why would she give me like free information for no reason? But yes, let's meet. So I ended up sitting down with her. Name's Tara, and she was a wealth of knowledge. She manages 300 units for a property an owner, and does all that by herself through Appfolio. And so she introduced me to Appfolio, explained it, showed it to me, and so you have to have 50 units in order to subscribe to this system. So I actually ended up reaching out to a couple other investors that I've sold houses to and worked with, and then another realtor. And between the three of us, we had well over 50 properties. So we were able to subscribe to the system, and it was $250 a month. Like, to me, that was a no-brainer after seeing what it did. And what I did learn, if you guys decide if you are transitioning from like a cozy to an Appfolio, is they tell you, like, they give you this spreadsheet and they're like, fill in all the details. And me, I'm kind of not a details person. So I was like, I'll fix it later. Don't do that. Fill in every line of that spreadsheet. And I know the people who do spreadsheets and software know that. I didn't know it. So I'm just trying to save anyone else who's going in that direction the headache later, because like your marketing description is in that spreadsheet, you know, all about the property. Well, when that goes vacant, it literally will just post it for you, you know, and if that marketing description is missing, you got to go in and enter it, and you could have done it all in one. So so when they sent that to me, that was one thing. Like, Appfolio didn't explain that to me. They just were like, here's this spreadsheet, fill it out and let us know when it's ready. And we were in a rush to get this done before the next month's rent hit. And then I realized I wish I would have just taken the time, collected that monthly rent one more time in person, and then did it the right way. And, you know, learning curve, hopefully save some other people some time and energy.
Yeah, that is probably, out of all of it, I feel like the funnest part of it is acquiring the properties, fixing them up. And I don't know if you guys were you guys doing the BRRRR strategy on those? Were you like buying them, renting them, renovating them? Or were you always coming up with like 20-25% down on all of yours? Or how did you guys?
We got it's a little bit different, because when we bought like our first couple of properties, one was one that we owned. And then my grandpa passed away, and we bought that out of an estate. So we honestly got a little bit, like, things kind of fell into place for us on the first couple properties. And then we had enough equity that when an opportunity presented itself, we were able to cross leverage that equity that we had. But yes, I feel like from watching my investors and what they're doing, they're definitely doing the BRRRR strategy. And it's just not like we haven't done that. I can't think of any that we've done that on.
Yeah.
Most of ours we've done
it depends on the bank too. Like, sometimes they don't require you to do like a refinance. They just know that if you have somebody in your network to do a CMA for you, and they tell you that you have this amount, they just basically like grab that chunk of equity, throw it at that property, and then they have it. Yep. And that's what we did. You guys call it cross leveraging, call it equity swapping, but it's it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And we did that on a bunch of properties that we purchased too. But we also own a couple of commercial properties as part of our portfolio. And if you haven't gotten into commercial, if you can find the right tenants, man, it's way.
That's what we're looking at right now. So that's super. Yeah. That's super cool that
we
you brought
bought
that up.
3 years ago now, I guess. We bought a $800,000 commercial, like, fixer-upper.
Yeah.
And we put $100,000 into it. We got a tenant in there for 5 years, and it actually ends up being a title company. And so, like, they're like the permanent tenant, like they're not going anywhere, because they put $200,000 of their own money into our place. And so it worked out really, really well. We gave them a smoke and deal because I had kind of slowed down a little bit. So we gave them like a smoke and deal with a graduated scale and stuff like that. So it actually worked out really well. And then we ended up splitting that. It's a 7,000 square foot commercial building. And then we split it into 2 units. And then we put a healthcare company in the back. So we have a healthcare, in-home health care that they primarily work with veterans. And then in the front of the building is the title company. And so that actually ended up working pretty sweet. So if you ever want to diversify, get into bigger office spaces that have plenty of parking. The key is plenty of parking. Closer to downtown, where you're condensed, where there's more businesses that are like smaller businesses that are like, oh, we would love to expand, but we want to stay in the same area. Whereas if it's further distances, because I know like in the Omaha area, a lot of your office spaces are like way on the outskirts of town. And
and that's where
like,
there's a ton of
like customers don't want to drive, 45 minutes just to be there for a 10-minute appointment and then leave again and drive another 45 minutes across town. Where if it's closer to the downtown area where they can hit 5 or 6 different appointments at once, because most of your really good lucrative commercial spaces that don't stay vacant for very long are closer to other businesses because they are looking to expand, because they're they want another spot. So that's just a little
I love that
for you to think about, because the tough challenge with commercial is the vacancy rate and how long they're vacant. And if you're highly leveraged, which in order to make money in real estate, and especially in the rental space, you have to be leveraged. I mean, that's how you make money. And so just think about that when you're looking at spaces, or something that's a little bit dilapidated where you can throw a few dollars at it, and then because it has all the other things.
Right.
So that's been a lot of fun. So okay. So because our problem with our rental business is that we've self-managed all of our stuff from day one. Our first 2 rental properties that we had were single family ones that we lived in, and we turned them into rentals because the 30-year highly leveraged 30-year mortgages are easier. And yes, we did, for the record, we did live in these. And then we bought, when I got in the business in 2010, we didn't hit our crash until 2011. So we were able to scoop up quite a few REO properties. And so the first couple we bought were like around $100,000. And so we scooped those up on a 30-year mortgage, 20% down. And now they're worth like almost 3 times what we purchased for them.
Oh, that's amazing.
10 years ago. So if you're listening to this and you're not investing in real estate, there is no better investment that is consistently profitable than real estate. The risk is pretty small as long as you know you can cover your debt obligation. But outside of that, I mean, there's always somebody's going to need a roof. Someone's going to need a place to live. Somebody's got to pay rent. And sometimes you might have to adjust your rents because they're, flexible, they're bouncing up and down, in terms of like what the rental market is doing. Sometimes you have to make some adjustments because it's sitting vacant for too long and you have to adjust your rent down to get somebody in there. But as long as you can get somebody in there to cover your minimal debt obligation, sometimes you might have to cost you a little money for maintenance and things like that. But at the end of the day, the long term, like I'll just give you an example. I bought a piece of property because my wife she owned her own business practice. She's a psychologist and she owned her own practice, and we bounced around because her business was growing so fast. And where we were sitting, we bought this little mini mansion that was a 3-story old school Victorian mansion that was all the ornate big columns, the very decorative corners on all of the doors, the scrolling staircase that goes upstairs, and just very ornate. And we had an opportunity to purchase that thing for about 1/3 of what it was worth. And so there was another one across the street that came for sale. And so we ended up buying that at a premium because we were looking to expand and we didn't want to move locations again, because this was the 3rd time we had moved locations. So we bought it, and we weren't making any money on it, but we were buying it for office space. Well, we ended up making another move into this big commercial space. That 7,000 square foot building was originally her office. And then she sold all of her intellectual property and sold it to another entity, and we kept the building, and we used an SBA loan. So there's a whole nother, we could probably do a whole nother show on just that. But so anyways, so we do that, and we're still holding on to this other space. Well, it just so happened that it was a 2-unit. There was an old building that was built in 1889 on the front, and then a townhouse that the owners built for themselves, and they rented out the old building. They built this little 2-bedroom townhouse on the back that was built in 2004. And so but there was no money in it when we first bought it. I mean, if we were not fully occupied, we were going to lose money every month. So we ended up getting a vacancy, and it was costing us about $400 a month. And at the time, there was a little bit of a slowdown in the rentals. And in order for us to purchase this, we did an equity swap from the house across the way, because I told you we bought it at a third of the value. And so then we ended up selling that property, and they basically bought down what we owed on that piece of property, because we had to do that equity swap, by $80,000. And then we refinanced it. And so what we originally bought this property for, almost $400,000, was now worth $289,000 is what we owed on it. So after we refinanced it, our payments got cut in half, and now it becomes profitable again. And so sometimes you have to take take it in the wallet a little bit in order to see the opportunities. And so it's all about knowing your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you should, your numbers are your personality of your business. And as long as you know what your personality of your business is, you should be able to have a good conversation with your business, so. Well,
and the tax benefits too. Like when you think about, you got the depreciation, and, sometimes I'm like, okay, we might not cash flow on this property for whatever reason. And there's probably a reason we bought it. My personal business, we offer to buy our clients' homes if for some reason they won't sell, and we're in a really competitive market right now. So like when I go on a listing appointment, we aren't going to win competing offers if we have a home sale contingency. So luckily we have the investment business, and I can go in and say, you know what, I'll give you this for the house. Here's the benefit to you is you don't have to do any work. You don't have to pack right away. We don't have to do pictures, but it does cost you a little bit. So, we're going to give you this amount, but you don't pay any commission. So we're going to give you this amount guaranteed, or we can list it, go through this process. And here's what I would list it for, even if I'm the one who does this. And then a lot of times they're like, that sounds way better. I don't care if I'm not getting an extra 10 grand. Like if you can take it off our hands and we don't have to stress about it, we're fine with it. So we've gotten properties that way. And as a customer service kind of thing, we do pay a little over market. I'm not offering them, 70 cents on the dollar. I'm offering about 80 to 85 cents on the dollar. And so, but we're not paying, there's no commission. And so there's a benefit there. I'm paying about $5,000 over. They're selling it for about 5 to 10 grand under. So it's kind of meeting in the middle for the good of the client and the overall client experience. But then that's actually been a really good thing for us because, the rental market here is phenomenal. Rental prices are good. So even if I'm seeing investors, I shouldn't even say that we're overpaying, because I'm seeing investors buying properties here for 20 to 25,000 for the same, over what we're getting them for the same properties and in a higher tax area. So I'm like, I don't know how these people are cash flowing. It is what it is. I encourage you, if you're looking at this and you're an agent, you know how to run the numbers, look at the rental market, make sure, like you said, your debt service is covered or close to, or you have a plan for that. But at the end of the day, if you are a producing agent, like let's say you're making 100 grand a year, I like to look at, I need, because you depreciate over 27 and a half years. So you need 2.75 million in property, if I'm doing my math right, to offset your income so that you're not paying income tax on that 100 grand. And talk to your CPA. I'm not a CPA, but it's huge. And then on top of that, you're getting the appreciation of the property. And, we just we had our accountant into our mastermind yesterday and talking about step-up basis. If you never plan to sell that property and you plan on leaving a legacy and you've got children and you die with those properties, and he mentioned, don't gift the properties right before you die on your deathbed. Make sure that you're set up so that goes over to them. I believe on the step-up basis, this is new to me. I'm not an accountant. That's why we have really solid relationships, but that's a powerful thing as far as taxes go. So I encourage you, do this stuff now. Don't wait. People say, oh, I'll do it when this happens. Or, one of the things I've heard is, I just lost my job. I can't buy a rental property. You do not buy a rental property to pour money into it. You buy a rental property. If you buy it right, the goal is for it to set you up for financial freedom. I mean, we've got 20-year mortgages or it's amortized over 20 years on most of our properties. And the first one we bought, my daughter was 3, and my goal was, okay, maybe I'll keep this property. We'll keep it as a rental. And when she's 18, she can decide to use that. The house will be paid off. She'll hopefully have $150,000 for college, or she can live in it. She can rent it and keep the rental income. So we had, those discussions of what we're going to do, and we didn't really plan on it getting to where it's at. And now we look at our portfolio, and it's phenomenal. And we've started this 5 years ago. So, we've got a multi-million-dollar portfolio. And if I hadn't, decided to do that first one, or I say I a lot, and it's not I, me and my husband both are guilty of that. But, we look at this now and we're like, this is what we worked so hard. So yes, was there nights that we've had, we have this funny story. I woke up on a Sunday morning one time and my phone was like blowing up, and I was like, what the hell's going on? And we had a property that we Airbnb'd, and there was long-term rented. It was a duplex, long-term tenants upstairs, main floor was Airbnb. And it worked because we were like, okay, the guys upstairs can let us know if there's a problem. And it was kind of like we had eyes on site. Well, they happened to work weekends at Boys Town, so they would go out of town, or they would be gone for the weekend. And I get this call, the people went out and partied Saturday night, so they're, all tipsy, and 3 o'clock in the morning, they roll in the house and there's water coming from the kitchen ceiling. And so I didn't see the phone calls until like 6:37 in the morning when I woke up, and I'm like, why do I have 20 missed calls? So me and Brad drive over, and she's like, we checked out, we went and got a hotel, we were just scared, we didn't know what was going to happen. Me and Brad walk in, and it was like the fluorescent light, and it crashes down. And the toilet in the second floor had been overflowing for the entire weekend while the guys were gone.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yes. So out of all of our rental stories, I've only got 2 that are really like, for a multi-million-dollar portfolio to only have 2 really crazy stories, I think that's pretty good. And, it's like real estate, you're going to, out of all the transactions you do, there's going to be a couple that you're just like, what the hell, how are we going to get through this? And so that was one of them. And so we joke like, we'll never, that was an adventure. Like, what do we do? Who do we call? It's Sunday. I don't even know where to start, kind of a thing. We ended up selling that property, bought that one though for $75,000 because it was listed in the MLS as a single family, and it was a multifamily.
Oh,
so
nice.
I think it sold. So there's opportunities, you guys, everywhere. That's the thing, is you just gotta, like, especially if you're working with buyers a lot, first-time home buyers, you're gonna see more opportunity. That's when I found the most opportunity, is when I was out showing first-time home buyers houses in that 150 to 175 price point. And I'd see one that had been sitting for a while and walk in and wonder why. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna just throw an offer and see what they do. And then they take it, and you just made money. So anyways, that house we ended up selling not even 9 months later for $128,000, I think it was. It was right around $125,000, multiple offers. So in 9 months, and one shitty story I like to say, we got $50,000 out of that property. And so we ended up taking that $50,000, paying off another house that we had. So we had one free and clear now. And that turned into, we've got this property that we can now leverage when we need to buy additional properties. And so it does kind of, you don't realize what your efforts are doing until all of a sudden overnight. And it was kind of like a whoa moment for us. Like, this property that we had worked so hard on, it was an Airbnb. I was there cleaning it myself when the cleaning lady called in sick. I was, when there would be, and it was in this area that there's a lot of mice and stuff. So we'd have mice in the property, and it was a piece of work, but it created so much more opportunity for us later, that you look back on that, when I wanted to cry probably, once a month. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for it. Sell our whole portfolio.
Right.
And like, that one property set us up for success on so many other properties without us realizing it. So it just, when you start to, don't look at it transaction to transaction or rental to rental. Look at what you're building. You're building yourself a legacy. You're building tax benefits. You're building wealth for your kids in the future. There is so much more to this, and it's really amazing. And it's like, I am like, why, how did we get so blessed when we look at, our financial picture now? And we didn't do anything anybody else can't do. We didn't make, a ton of money or anything. We did what the normal family does. You get it, you have a kid, you need to upgrade, you take your first house and you decide, do you sell it or do you rent it? We decided to rent it and see what happened, and it worked out. So I encourage you, and I tell all my clients when they are moving up, I always have the conversation of, I want you to know this is a good rental. And yep, I won't make a commission by telling you that, but that's what is important to me, is I want you to look back on this decision and make sure you made the right decision. And a lot of people do need the equity. But like when Brad, he's a mortgage guy, so when he's looking at the financial picture, he's doing the same thing. You guys have 60 grand sitting in this property. Refinance it, pull 30 out, put 10% down on your $300,000 house, keep your house as a rental, make some cash flow, and now the difference in payment that you have on the new house is offset by your additional rental income. So you just went from a $175,000 house to a $300,000 house, and you're actually paying the exact same as you were. And at the end of the, however many years, 20 years, that now is paid off. So, based on appreciation, you've got a $250,000 property that is paid off. It's $250 sitting in the bank that you don't have to do a whole lot for. So it's wild. You just have to see the opportunity in front of you.
Yeah, I think people are just so scared because they're like, well, I don't want to deal with toilets, tenants, and trash, and really it's not that at all. And it's if you have good realtors that you've worked with that helped you buy that house, chances are that if they're that good, they have properties and they're able to guide you through. Like I've got a guy right now, he's going to turn 21 next month. He's on his 5th property already.
Woo, good job.
Yeah. And so we're talking and he's like, JP, you got to teach me how to do this property management thing. And I was like, dude, all you got to do is just make sure you call me first. I will give you the guys you need and just put them in your phone. And in most of your property management is just making phone calls. I mean, it's not a lot of running around, and it's not so much as what people think, like, oh, I got to get up at 2 a.m. and then go run across town and all this stuff. And they've psyched themselves out of purchasing,
fear mindset,
rental properties. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's like, you don't realize where you're at today, but 5 years from now, you're like, holy smokes. Like and then you go, man, I should have done it 10 years ago,
For real.
It's like when I got into real estate, like I was like, oh, because I got into real estate really late. Like I had already had 30 jobs by the time I found out about being a real estate agent, and I was like, dang, I should have done this like right out of high school. Like going to college and wasting all that money was a joke.
Amen to that.
So I got lucky. Yeah, what's that?
Oh, I've had clients who are like, I want my daughter to talk to you. You're super successful, and encourage her to go to college and get a degree. And I'm like, sorry, I don't have a degree. So I'll give them advice, but it probably won't align with what you're hoping. I'll tell them. I'm going to tell them to do what they're passionate about, and that's going to make them, some money, and the money will follow. And so it's funny. I'm like, I want to talk to them and I will coach them, but it's not going to be what you think.
I only went to college because my in-laws' vision of success was going to college, get a degree, go get a job like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I knew at the end of the day, like that was never the end goal. Because I had always had sales jobs. I was already out of high school for like 4 years before I went to college. So I had already wrote off college. I'm glad I kind of had the experience just so I can tell people that I know what college is like, and I can tell you how much of a waste of money it is. Because I had already joined the military, so I got some of that for free, or most of it for free.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
So it was more of a experimental college experience. Because I went to college, I was like 28 when I went to like normal 4-year college, and all these kids are like 20, 21. And I feel like I'm the old guy at college. and it was just pretty funny. Like, so I'm able to at least have the relatability and stuff. And so
I did go to college. I'm one credit short of associate's degree, but I was like, well, what's the point? It's accounting too, and I'm never going to do my own accounting. So
truth.
I have basic accounting. I do my QuickBooks and my Appfolio books is to an extent. And then when I get too far, it's you hand it off and stay focused on what makes the money.
Well, my associate's degree is worse than that. It's an associate's of applied sciences. So basically it's the equivalent of on-the-job training with a certificate. Like if that's how bad, yeah. So when I was walking to places, they're like, you have an associate's degree? And they're looking at this and I'm like, I've never heard of this applied associate's degree. And they're like, I tell them what it is. And they're like, yeah, thanks for coming. Have a great day, you know? And then I went back to college and I was a semester away from getting my degree in sociology. And I'm like,
wow.
I talk to people every day and I don't need a degree for that. So I don't know what, you know? So, and it was just kind of a strange scenario. My wife joined the military and she's like, well, I'm going to be leaving next month and you still have a semester left or one semester left to graduate. And I was like, I'm out. I was, you know me, I was never into this. She's like, I know, you did it for daddy, you know? So, but yeah, it's been a fun ride. It was a lot of patience and time, but you know, I have a little bit of ADHD because at that time, everything was transitioning from in class to online.
Yeah.
And I'm way too old for online training of any kind. And so if it wasn't for the fact that I got my real estate license in Wyoming, I probably wouldn't have ever got my real estate license because everywhere else it's online. And
oh yeah. I have to go in person too. I did in person here.
Oh,
people ask me all the time and they're like, you know, how do I get, you know, you get asked all the time too, how do you get your real estate license? Where do you go? And it's like, I tell them, I encourage in person and then they go online. But that's, you know, that I'm like, you're a different breed than me. I gotta learn, I gotta do and learn like in person and actually like.
I need somebody there to be like, here's the thing.
Yep.
You know, not like, okay, well, we're going to pause for 2 seconds, hit pause, take your quiz, and then.
Yeah, and then come back on.
No, I can't do it. I can't.
Maybe we could create an online experience for rental properties. Just
right?
Here's your house. What would you do to it? Check out, color in the walls, add carpet, come back in and turn it in and let's see what you did. And how much money
we could just create a situation to where everybody could just have a 3D tour. And then if they want to do any damage, they could like click the icon for punching the wall and stuff, or I want to wreck the carpet, you know, click the thing and you can wreck the carpet. Don't do it in the real world. Just do it online. And then you get your security.
What is it, Sims?
What's that?
Isn't that like the Sims world?
Yes, Sims world for rental properties.
Yeah.
Or like Grand Theft Auto for rental properties where you can, you know, break the windows and you can smoke your weed in there and all that stuff. But just don't do it in
the actual property,
you know.
Oh, that's
probably, awesome. But because we're so close to Colorado, that's probably my top 3 complaints is I have a child and I think apartment 3 is smoking weed and I'm like, dude, okay, let me preface something here. Property management is not babysitting. It is not. So if you think that I'm here to be your dad, you know, like I've got tenants that will have called me and they're like, okay, so what do I do in this situation? I'm like, don't call me, call the cops. Like I was
just going to say, yes, I have had that conversation more than exactly. Why are you calling me and not the police? This is where you would file a police report.
Yeah. Domestic issues between you and your spouse, not my job. You know, problems with, you know, quiet enjoyment, not my problem. You know, they just think that somehow the landlord is like, you know, Superman and we're supposed to just swoop in there every time to save the day. And it's just not the case, you know? So,
whole show on just funny tenant stories.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on that because I have 1,000.
Yes. I've had a tenant, she called and she's like, I can't pay my rent. She was brand new, sweetest girl. She's like, I can't pay my rent next month. I have $500 in my account and rent $600. What do I do? I said, well, maybe a part-time job. She's like, well, how do people pay their bills when they don't have money in their account? And I like stopped on the phone and I'm like, this, out of all of the conversations I've ever had, this is a real one. This is happening right now.
I had that where the guy had lost his job and I said, Walmart's hiring. Oh, well, maybe I should put my application in over there. Well, you probably should. And guess what? It's right across the street too. Like it's literally across the street. And so he's like, and at this time, I'm probably way nicer than I probably should be when it comes to some scenarios, like, especially with COVID and that hitting. And then, tenants are like, ooh, light bulb moment. Let's not pay our bills for 3 months, And so I worked out this deal with this kid that I said, okay, so you're 5 months behind, because he was 2 months behind and then COVID hit and I was already trying to get him out.
Yeah.
So now I ended up being 5 months behind. So I said, okay, here's the deal. Like, you sell me your car in lieu of your rent. So he ended up owning a sports car that was paid off. And so he assigned it over to me. Well, it just so happened he was still $250 short. And I'd already filed the eviction paperwork prior to. And so I just went over to his place. He assigned me the car. And then after I was the legal owner of his vehicle, I told him, I said, hey, and by the way, you still owe $250 or you're still going to get evicted. And so he started trying to call me and this and that. Well, I already had a court date. I've already spent the money on, the eviction process. So I said, if you want to settle this, you just got to come to court. Well, I didn't tell him when court was because that's his job. And he had to figure out his way to get there because he didn't have a car anymore because he sold it to me. And he ended up missing his court date. And then he calls me and says, hey, how is it possible that I got evicted for $250? And I said, because you didn't show up to court, dude. That's why. And my attorney said, dude, don't coddle them. He was behind before. He didn't even have the money. The only reason he's mad is because he doesn't have a car and he still don't have any money, And then he tells me, oh, I put my application in at Walmart. And I'm like, okay, so here's where I started having this like problems moment. I've told you how to do it, what to do, how to get there, how to get the end result. And I have no sympathy for you anymore.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
So
it's hard. And that is something when you get into rentals, if you haven't done it yet, I think your first 4 to 5 sob stories, they pull at your heart and you're like, okay, let's try. You know what? I totally understand. We'll let you move, your mom co-signs, whatever. And now, I mean, I've had people tell me like, holy cow, that was, you like just turned, and I just ask the questions now, like, do you have this credit score? I mean, it's, you do learn. And yes, like, I mean, there's a whole checklist that we've got and following the guidelines and everything and fair housing, but like you'll get, I would say so many calls are, hi, I just left my husband. He has a drug problem. My credit is screwed because he has an alcohol problem, whatever it is. And that story comes up over and over again. If they're qualified, great. If they're not qualified, sorry. And when you first get into it, it is like, it's an emotional kind of roller coaster at first. And then you do learn how to have the conversations. You learn how to be a little bit bold, a little bit more strong. And obviously I think, I'm an, empathist, and you feel for them. And so you want to help them. And my husband's the same way. Like, we want to help people all the time. And unfortunately, your rentals, it is a business. And you have to make, somebody's got to pay the mortgage. So whether it's your tenant or you, one of you is paying the mortgage. And if you know that in the back of your mind when you take that call versus, okay, we're going to give them a chance. And that's, when I coach people who are getting investments, they always say, oh my gosh, we have this friend. She just, this is what happened. So we already found a tenant. I don't need to advertise it. And it's like, well, make sure they're actually qualified and will pay the rent, especially if it's a friend, because now you're going to have to evict your friend, which is really crappy. So I just like, not to be cold-hearted, but you do get a little bit more desensitized to certain scenarios, and that's okay. It's a business, and we have to treat it like a business, just like you would when you go into work. If somebody's showing up not doing their job, I mean, that's your tenant. If they're not doing their job and paying their rent, and then they don't get to stay. So
yeah, I've met a lot of cool people over the years with some tenants that I've had. Some tenants that I've had are actually still friends of mine today.
yeah,
I've sold them houses and, you know, just a lot of cool stories like that. And then I've also had some that, you know, I thought they were friends and then I had to evict them, you know, but
right.
at the end of the day, like I always tell my tenants this, I say, you know, if today we might be friends, tomorrow we might be enemies because it's not personal, it's business, you know, and I try to preface that all the time. And they know I understand. I said, you know, if you don't pay, you don't stay. I get it, you know. And as long as you set those expectations, just like anything else, just like if you're working with your buyers or your sellers, if you set the right expectations, you know, then, and if you know your market and you know
Right.
your job, then you're able to guide them appropriately and you will mitigate a ton of those roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where, being a professional and being an expert at what you do makes the difference, makes all the difference. The experience that they're able to have, it makes all the difference. And so, any last words for us today?
Well, I feel like we kind of went on the negative tenant thing at the end, and it's not my intent because we have 43 units, and out of those, like I said, we've had 2. So the thing is, the people who are so awesome, there's nothing to tell because it's just going well.
It's like giving
So
a review.
what?
It's like asking for reviews, you know, the ones that want
Yeah.
a positive review, you have to ask for one. And the ones that want to give you a negative one, you don't have to ask for them.
Exactly. So like if you look back at our whole history and, you know, tenant turnover, it is seriously, it's 90% positive. And, you know, I had a tenant text me yesterday and he's like, we just love you as a landlord. We can't afford it anymore. Our lease is coming up. Do you guys have anything cheaper we could move into? And like you generate these relationships and you take care of each other. And if you create a win-win for both parties, just like in real estate, you're going to have a really successful business. If you make it difficult, you know, if you make things difficult or you're not maintaining your properties, it's going to reflect. So just treat your business as, you know, it's your baby, and build it and grow it and nurture it. And then it'll be an amazing thing for you. So thank you. I really appreciate this interview. This was awesome.
Yeah, this is so awesome. So if somebody wants to reach out and say thank you for the information, it's been a game changer for me, or if they have a referral for you out in the Omaha area, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you guys definitely reach out. Contact me on my cell. It's 402-980-7972. Website, email, Facebook is great. I'm all over Facebook, so my whole team and everybody in Omaha probably knows that. So yeah, we love outside referrals. We have a lot of out-of-state investors that look here in Nebraska. We're actually helping a client. We met him through Facebook in California. He's buying a property here, so we are very good about FaceTime and running, you know, analyzing the rents and getting the unit rented for our out-of-state buyers as well.
Awesome. All right, Jamie. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it. I know this was really fast. Matter of fact, it's kind of weird. You're probably thinking, man, these guys probably known each other for a really long time. No, we met 3 days ago. So it's actually been pretty awesome. Yeah, and you know, it's cool because what real estate gives is such a bonding thing. It's crazy. Like we could talk for hours and hours and hours about our real estate experiences, our personal experiences, how we grew up in the business and all this kind of stuff. And that's what makes it so awesome. So if you're listening and you're probably thinking, yes, I do the same thing every single day. And it is great because there's just so much here, so much to unpack. So I hope you guys got some really good nuggets today to act on. So don't just think about it, be about it. Awesome. Well, thanks, Jamie.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.